diamond-cut sea bass with scales fashioned from baby zucchini, beef cheeks with onion and mustard, smoked sturgeon cheesecake with caviar. Daniel Hume, the chef owner of Manhattan's acclaimed 11 Madison Park, he's known for his 8-course, $335 per person tasting menu. Only the second American kitchen ever to be awarded the world's best restaurant, Hume's team has masterfully curated museum-quality cuisine for the world's most elite clientele for over a decade. So you can probably imagine the reaction he received when this past spring, Hume announced that 11 Madison Park was going vegan, becoming the only 3-star Michelin restaurant, of which there are 135 in the world, to remove meat and dairy from its menu. It is unheard of for a master chef of Hume's caliber to avoid using cream or butter or bones in their creations. Overhauls such as these for businesses like Hume's typically occur out of necessity in order to survive. This shift for the top-ranked 11 Madison Park happened for another reason. Shuttering the restaurant because of COVID-19, Hume had an opportunity to hit pause, to take stock, and then to chart a new, old path for his career. What I mean is, he chose to return to what initially inspired him as a young chef way back in Switzerland, to prepare dishes that nourish and demonstrate respect for his ingredients and the planet, rather than just impress with his plating, his ambiance, and his prices. Hume capitalized on the disruption of the COVID-19 pandemic, not for financial reasons, but spiritual ones. He made the shift as a reinvestment in his well-being, finding passion again in his work, and in doing so, given his reputation, he may perhaps one day take the restaurant industry with him. The chef acted on what many have been saying for months. There is no going back to the way things were before the pandemic. As one public theologian recently reflected, it is a hard truth to swallow, but there won't be a return to normal. Instead, the opportunity before all of us is to free ourselves from the world that was in the before times. In truth, the reality is that what many of us thought as normal before the pandemic was broken in many ways. And if we continue to barrel towards it with singular focus, a transformative future will be foreclosed to us all. As one London Business School professor explains, events like the COVID-19 pandemic that disrupt our habitual routines have the potential to catalyze real change. They give us a chance to experiment with new activities and to create new connections. We have an opportunity now to create a better post-pandemic world. This is actually what we mean by teshuvah. It's not just saying sorry, but in this season, we're invited to join in the actual recreation of our souls. For our work in this new year should not just be about refurbishing what we knew before, but rather creating a better, values-driven future for ourselves, for our families, and for our world. It seems the world is waking up to what Judaism has professed all along, that the unfolding of creation is ongoing and without end. As our rabbis taught, everything that came into being during the 6 days of creation requires improvement. For example, the mustard seed needs to be sweetened, and humans need rectification. We are guarantors of a faith tradition rooted in the most remarkable of all religious ideas. Not only were we created in God's image, we are called on to act in God's ways, serving as God's partners in the ongoing work of repair and renewal. We are powerful. We can and we must change the world. Perhaps I should say we can choose to change the world or not. Choice being the operative word of the day. As today's Torah portion teaches, life is about making choices, and the choices we make have consequences. Parashat Nitzavim, the portion that we read on Yom Kippur morning, concludes, I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Uvecharta b'chaim, choose life, thereby you shall long endure. This is not the kind of choice as in selecting between two dishes off the menu at your favorite restaurant. The kind of choosing that I'm talking about, choosing life, is more than that. And our tradition reminds us again and again and again that the consequences of making the right choice here has the potential to change everything. That possibility to transform our lives is literally in our hands, if only we will choose it. As Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the father of the Musar movement, taught, our world is a world of transformation. When we are improving and refining ourselves, we are in concert with the divine plan, fulfilling our purpose for existing in the world. Not only is the human being created for this purpose, but we are also given the ability and the capacity to attain this supreme goal. But of course, doing this kind of soul work is hard. It takes courage, strength to pull ourselves out of default mode, to awaken from the regular hum of our daily lives. And it's especially difficult when the world as we know it is suddenly and dramatically changed forever, as is the case for all of us as we have experienced this past year and a half. So how do we start? Recently, Professor Mina Ibarra, an authority on leadership and career development, shared her observations of individuals who successfully made major life changes this past year. Despite major devastation during the pandemic, including loss of life and livelihood, Dr. Mina observed that for people like Daniel Hume and the many who made major career shifts during the pandemic, so many now share how the forced separation of aspects of their quote-unquote normal life, going to the office, traveling, eating out at restaurants, attending school in person, well, those all offered space and time to reevaluate. The physical distance offered a new vantage, which many of the participants in Dr. Mina's research said opened doors to new possibilities. As the Talmud teaches, Meshaneh makom, meshaneh mazal. Change your place, change your luck. Well, that's a good start, says Dr. Mina. However, those who were really successful did more than just reflect and evaluate. We rarely think our way into new ways of acting. Rather, we act our ways into new ways of thinking and being. In other words, after taking stock, those who were successful chose to act. As her data revealed, our ability to take advantage of habit discontinuity depends on what we do in that narrow window of opportunity that opens after routine-busting changes. Unlike God, we cannot think or speak things into being. The changes we wish for ourselves or our world. Rather, we must enact them. In so doing, taught Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, it is in the deeds that human beings become aware of what life really is, of our power to harm and to hurt, to wreck and to ruin. Likewise, our ability to derive joy, to bestow it upon others. The deed is the test, the trial, and the risk. Jewish tradition recognizes that the work is hard, and as such warns us of the power of default mode to coax us back into stagnation. Consider the story of Noah's Ark towards the very beginning of our Torah scroll. Noah, whose name means the one who will provide us relief, was chosen by God among all people to help rebuild creation after the great flood. You know this story. The righteous Noah answers God's call to construct a great big ark so that he can save his family along with 2 animals of every kind, returning them safely to dry land when the punishing floodwaters recede. Of course, afterwards, God blesses Noah, forging a special brit, or covenant, promising never again to destroy the earth. The world is refreshed, free from evil, and Noah walks away having learned an important lesson after quarantining with his family and the animals in the ark. There's more to the story. Here's what you didn't learn in Hebrew school. The first thing that Noah does after the flood is he gets drunk. Newly freed from the cramped confines of lockdown aboard the ark with what I have to imagine was a steady, annoying cacophony of sounds and unpleasant smells, Noah's first move was to plant a vineyard and indulge in the pleasures of life in the before times. Don't get stuck on the fact that he drank alcohol. This is not a sermon about substance use. Noah's vineyard and his drinking could be replaced with any other of our normal behaviors that clutter up our lives and cloud our consciousness. Those habits and the tales that we tell ourselves that inhibit our growth. Those things that we think we cannot break as if they are inflicted upon us from on high. I'm not really a prayer. I get so overwhelmed by all of the causes that need my support. I'm just not the one that my kids talk to when they're struggling. I couldn't possibly do it this way after doing it that way for so long. Who am I to think that I can actually make a difference? I was recently reminded of a story of the great Rabbi known as the Chofetz Chaim. When asked how he had made such an impact in the 20th century Jewish world, he answered, I set out to change the world, but I failed. So I decided to scale back my efforts and only try to influence the Jewish community of Poland, but I failed there too. So I targeted the community in my hometown, but I achieved no greater success. Then I gave all my effort to changing my own family, and I failed at that too. Finally, I decided to change myself, and that's how I had such an impact on the Jewish world. The truth of the matter is, the work of teshuvah begins with ourselves. It's never too late to change. Jewish tradition, and these high holy days in particular, call us to claim agency, to choose life, to choose our own life and how we live it, and in doing so, do nothing less than change the world. While this soul work can be hard, it is not impossible, for we each already possess all of the tools that we need. As this morning's Torah portion will tell us, this instruction is not too baffling for you, nor is it beyond reach. No, the thing is very close to you. It's in your mouth, and it's in your heart. Like Daniel Hume's major transformation this past year, or perhaps I should say his rediscovery of what inspired his creativity in the first place, the change that we seek is in us. We just need to muster the courage to embody it. The point is that we have all lived through this moment in time. And if we weren't already considering what's next, or how to find more meaning and more connection, well, it's time. A third nudge from this morning's Torah portion. The repetition of the Hebrew word hayom that you'll hear soon, today. You stand here today, all of you, to enter into this covenant which your God is concluding with you today. Hayom. Today is precisely the time to wake up to the urgency of our soul work. There is no better time than Hayom, today. Hayom, right now. Because whenever that switch flips in our minds, urging us to turn back to what was normal and what was comfortable, well, then we squander the opportunity before us. So doubly today, not only are we living through this exceptional period in our history, a time that is ripe for transformation, but today is also Yom Kippur, our annual reminder both for each of us as individuals and for all of us as a collective to engage in the work of teshuvah, if only we would choose it. Shana Tova.